I've always felt very strongly about it, and I've been watching very carefully what others have been doing.
A bombshell revelation has rocked royal observers. Prince William has reportedly made his most ruthless executive decision to date, triggered by Prince Louis breaking into tears during a holiday at Balmoral. At the center of the storm is Lola Parker Bowles, Queen Camilla's granddaughter, who allegedly targeted young Louis with scathing remarks, insulted Catherine, Princess of Wales, and even dragged the late Princess Diana's name into the confrontation. In a surprising turn of events, Catherine remained entirely composed in front of the family. However, just hours later, William secretly summoned his aides to Kensington Palace to sign a series of unprecedented decrees, effectively stripping Camilla's family of all future royal privileges, bypassing the approval of King Charles altogether. When a furious Camilla demanded the king overturn the orders, Charles's reaction reportedly stunned the palace into absolute silence. What exactly did Lola say that drove William to ignite the biggest showdown yet with Camilla's side of the family? And why did King Charles choose to step back as the royal balance of power shifts over the tears of a young prince? Balmoral Castle had always maintained an inherent solemn stillness native to the Scottish Highlands. For centuries, it had borne witness to countless royal vacations, serving both as a sanctuary from the prying eyes of the media and an undercurrent stage for the simmering fractures within the House of Windsor. The atmosphere within the grey stone castle seemed to grow even more suffocating as the direct line of succession and the family of Queen Camilla gathered under the same roof. In the middle of the sprawling lawn behind the castle, Prince Louis, the youngest child, widely known for his high-energy innocence and those playful moments that broke the mold of royal etiquette, was happily playing by himself. The young prince, fourth in line to the British throne, was entirely oblivious to the complexities of the adult world surrounding him. Louis's innocence had always been a source of pride, yet also a constant anxiety for Catherine, Princess of Wales, who, despite her middle-class background, had spent over a decade resiliently holding her ground, cementing her firm position in the hearts of the British public as an emblem of poise and perfection. Stepping out from the shadows of the veranda, Lola Parker Bowles, Queen Camilla's teenage granddaughter, quietly approached. The presence of the Parker Bowles grandchildren at royal residences had been a subject of whispered controversy ever since the 2023 coronation, where they had been granted symbolic roles right inside Westminster Abbey. Spoiled and sheltered beneath the growing shadow of her grandmother's power, Lola carried the unspoken arrogance of someone who believed the balance of power within the palace had shifted. As she walked toward Louis, her eyes betrayed a mixture of envy and disdain. Lola began hurling sharp, venomous words that shattered the tranquility of the late afternoon. Not stopping at mocking Louis's hyperactivity and his playful public antics, Lola deliberately aimed her arrows at Catherine, Princess of Wales, degrading her background with insidious derogatory remarks. Crueler still, the girl coldly brought up the tragedy of the late Princess Diana 30 years ago. The grandmother Louis had never met using it as a curse on the fate of women who dared to enter this family without formidable backing. Lola's cruel words, far too harsh for her age, cut like knives straight into the young prince's innocent soul. His confusion was swiftly replaced by sheer terror and deep emotional trauma. Louis's round blue eyes welled up, and tears of indignation streamed down his cheeks. Abandoning his half-played toy, the boy turned and ran at full speed toward the castle's main hall, where Catherine was standing and conversing with other family members. Louis lunged directly into his mother's arms, his hands tightly gripping the fabric of Catherine's dress as his choked, muffled sobs shook his small shoulders. The surrounding crowd, including courtiers and a few royals, instantly fell into a terrifying silence. Everyone held their breath, bracing for an outburst of rage. Yet Catherine maintained the astonishing self-possession forged through countless storms. She did not lose her temper, uttered no shouting words, nor did she display any sign of distress in front of the onlookers. The princess quietly knelt down, wrapped her arms entirely around her son, and gently stroked his back, employing the ultimate tenderness to soothe the child's fears. Standing not far away, Prince William, a man carrying the heavy burden of the monarchy's future, forever haunted by painful memories, of the cold isolation his mother had once endured, intently observed his wife's every move. He clearly saw the faint trembling in Catherine's tightly clenched hands and noticed her calm, almost chilling gaze that nevertheless held an underlying spark of fire as she looked up toward Lola, who was slinking away. Catherine's absolute composure was not submission, but the gathering of a massive storm. William understood his wife better than anyone. He knew this silence was a declaration that she would absolutely never overlook this insult. Once Louis had stopped crying and was led inside by the nannies, Catherine drew herself up to full height, facing her husband. Her eyes no longer held the soft warmth of a mother, but the sharp, unwavering resolve of a woman prepared to fight to protect her family. Stepping closer to William, Catherine looked deep into his eyes, her voice low audible only to the two of them, but carrying the weight of the world, shattering the thick atmosphere of Balmoral. "I will not let my children live the way Diana lived." Those words struck a chord deep within William's soul, awakening his every protective instinct and signaling the start of a quiet but ruthless purge of power, right from this very place. Inside the solemn bedroom, the yellowish light from the wall sconces failed to warm the freezing atmosphere between the Prince and Princess of Wales. Princess Catherine sat on the edge of the bed, her hands tightly interlaced to the point that her knuckles turned white. The composure she had forced herself to display before the crowd in the main hall now entirely collapsed, giving way to the deep bitterness and emotional trauma of a mother. Thinking of Louis's panicked tears and the venomous remarks targeting her middle-class background, her chest tightened with suffocating emotion. She did not fear the schemes directed at herself, but having innocent children dragged into the vortex of royal infighting was far beyond her limit of endurance. Catherine looked up at her husband, her eyes filled with ultimate anxiety for the future of their children. She began to express her long-suppressed thoughts, not with heated arguments, but in heavy choked confidences. She recalled the bloody and tearful history of the palace, where children of the direct line of succession could easily fall victim to generational fractures and the envy of collateral branches whose power was expanding by the day under the Queen's indulgence. Each of Catherine's words sounded like both a plea and a steel-hard affirmation. Their family, especially the three children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, had to be protected by the sturdiest fortress, regardless of whether it meant breaking protocols or the hypocritical concessions maintained for years. Standing by the window, looking out into the pitch-black night of the Scottish Highlands, Prince William listened in silence, his silhouette stretching across the ancient wooden floor. Every single word from his wife cut like sharp thorns through his own trauma-filled childhood memories. Images of his late mother, the late Princess Diana, isolated, helpless, and depleted within the cold walls of Kensington Palace, years ago suddenly rushed back, vivid and aching. William understood better than anyone the price paid for compromise and submission. He realized that the tolerance and deference he had shown toward his stepmother's family all these years had brought no peace. Instead, it had only caused outsiders to mistake their standing, brazenly challenging the boundaries of the ruling direct line. A rock-solid resolve ignited within the air. He would never allow his mother's tragedy to repeat in the lives of Catherine and their children. Endurance had reached its limit, and the Balmoral vacation was instantly cut short. Immediately after the private jet touched down in London, returning the family to the safety of Kensington Palace, Prince William did not rest for a moment. He walked straight into his private study with a cold, decisive demeanor never seen before. That very night, William secretly issued an emergency summons to the closest advisors of the Prince of Wales's office, the most loyal strategic minds who operated completely independent of Buckingham Palace officials. In the secluded space of the Kensington office, beneath the focused light of a desk lamp, William sat motionless, the natural authority of a future king, enveloping the entire room. The advisors entered with tense expressions, sensing the gravity of a historic decision about to be decreed. With no tedious procedures and no redundant explanations, the Prince of Wales looked directly at his trusted aides, his eyes gleaming with a ruthless determination. as he prepared to sign an unprecedented order in modern royal history. He took a small sip of his cooled tea, directed a razor-sharp gaze toward his private secretary, who was waiting for orders, and delivered a brief definitive sentence officially closing the era of concessions. It is time to draw the line. The study at Kensington Palace was submerged in a tense silence, broken only by the rustling of documents being flipped back and forth beneath the yellowish desk lamp. Prince William sat upright behind the large wooden desk, his solemn face entirely devoid of expression. Before him lay a dossier reviewing all regulations, schedules, and personnel lists involved in official royal engagements over the past 5 years. Every line of text, every name belonging to the Parker Bowles family, and Queen Camilla's maternal lineage was scrutinized by William with a cold, definitive gaze. To him, purging this parasitic power was no longer an option, but an immediate duty to protect the future throne. The final decision was made ruthlessly and swiftly. William took up his fountain pen, personally crossing out the Camilla family's presence from all future official royal ceremonies. Every symbolic role, the privilege of appearing on the Buckingham Palace balcony during major occasions, and the Queen's grandchildren's frequent access to and use of palace privileges were thoroughly terminated. This action by the Prince of Wales cut like a razor-sharp blade, completely severing the royal roots that Camilla had painstakingly tried to graft for her lineage over many years. Standing around the desk, the close advisors of the Kensington office exchanged deeply concerned glances, sweat breaking out on their foreheads. The private secretary slightly tightened his grip on the folder in his hands, his chest heaving with anxiety. Everyone clearly understood the terrifying weight of this order. This was not merely a staff change, but a direct declaration of war against Queen Camilla, who held significant influence over the king. The advisors tried to use careful, tactful words to remind the prince of the political fallout, the risk of an explosive internal confrontation within the family, and above all, the displeasure or even fury of King Charles III when his authority was challenged. Yet in the face of all remonstrances and the anxious faces of his subordinates, Prince William remained completely unyielding. His eyes were cold as ice, reflecting an iron will that could not be shaken. He would accept no further negotiation or delay. The pain of his young son and Catherine's tears at Balmoral had become the key that unlocked the vault of sheer decisiveness within him. William picked up the officially drafted documents, turned each page, and signed his name with absolute finality. He executed this entire process completely independently, without a single phone call, without seeking permission or consulting King Charles III. To William, the notification letter sent to Buckingham Palace would only be delivered after all decisions had taken legal effect and become irreversible. Holding the documents, still smelling of fresh ink, the private secretary bowed his head, slightly fully aware that he was holding a time bomb, capable of shaking the very foundations of the monarchy. Each official order bearing the seal of the Prince of Wales began to be secured and dispatched to offices, royal household departments, and palace security agencies. As the study door closed, William leaned back in his chair, directing his gaze out the window toward Kensington Gardens, where the darkness was swallowing everything, ready to face the tempest about to rise from the King's palace. The news of the orders from Kensington struck Buckingham Palace like a thunderbolt from a clear sky. In her sun-drenched yet freezing private sitting room, Queen Camilla stood frozen, her hands gripping the velvet-upholstered armrest of a chair so tightly that the blue veins stood out starkly on the back of her hands. The copied sheets of Prince William's official decrees lay scattered across the glass table like a public insult aimed directly at the Parker Bowles lineage. The complacency and peak status she had painstakingly built since the coronation were suddenly violently shaken. At the thought of her children and grandchildren being stripped of all privileges, sidelined from royal ceremonies like inferior outsiders, her chest heaved with a supreme rage that infused every vein. Unable to sit idly and endure this humiliation, Camilla immediately adjusted her attire with a highly authoritative yet undeniably rushed demeanor. She resolved to confront William face to face, to demand a proper explanation, and force the heir to rescind that arrogant decision. However, the encounter at a neutral office did not yield the results she expected. Before a Camilla blazing with furious fire and sharp accusations, the Prince of Wales responded with nothing but a cold, ruthlessly distant attitude. William's unwavering, unrippled gaze acted like a solid stone wall, completely blocking every effort of pressure from his stepmother, forcing her to realize that her influence over this stepson was absolutely zero. Recognizing William's unshakable firmness, Camilla knew that her single and final card now was King Charles III. In the world of sovereign power, only the supreme authority of the monarch could overturn an administrative order that had already taken effect. She believed deeply in the long-standing affection and bond between herself and the king, confident that he would not stand by and watch his wedded wife and her private family be unreasonably oppressed by his eldest son. With sharp calculation, Camilla turned and walked swiftly through the palace's long corridors, heading straight toward the king's private study, her mind racing to formulate the sharpest arguments to ignite the wrath of the head of the monarchy. However, just before she reached the door, a loyal courtier quietly approached and passed Camilla a piece of information that made her heart tighten. It turned out that King Charles III had received William's definitive notification letter long before the moment the orders were signed and approved at Kensington. What was terrifying was not that the king knew, but his absolute silence. For hours, he had not summoned, the council had issued no suspension orders, nor had he provided any response to the heir's office. The king's stillness acted as a bucket of cold water poured straight over Camilla's confidence, igniting a vague yet immense sense of dread within her heart. Even so, pride would not allow Camilla to back down. Standing before the tall oak door leading into the king's study, she took a deep breath to regain a modicum of composure, though her hand resting on the doorknob trembled slightly. She pushed the door open, her eyes locking onto the solitary silhouette of King Charles III, sitting at his desk, carrying with her all the expectations, indignation, and ambition of a powerful woman prepared to wager everything on a final verdict from the sovereign. The space inside King Charles III's study was enveloped in a suffocating, breathless tension. Queen Camilla approached the large wooden desk, her every gesture and stride exuding urgency, mingled with suppressed indignation. She began to present sharp arguments, sparing no words in criticizing Prince William's unilateral action. To her, the orders from Kensington were not only an act of disrespect toward the sovereign, but also an overstepping of an heir's authority, a direct threat to the current power structure of the royal family. Camilla used all her influence, decades of shared affection, and words designed to prick a king's pride to pressure her husband into immediately issuing a decree to overturn William's entire decision, restoring honor and privilege to the Parker Bowles family. In the face of the relentless high-pressure persuasion from his wife, King Charles III remained motionless in his high-backed leather chair. His face bore the deep lines of age and weariness from the continuous upheavals within the clan. The king's slender hands lightly brushed William's letter, which lay prominently in the center of the desk. He did not look at Camilla. Instead, he looked down quietly, rereading the definitive lines written by his eldest son. In the letter, William had used no provocative or confrontational language. He wrote with reverence yet absolute firmness, emphasizing that every decision made was entirely for the purpose of protecting the safety of his young family, while streamlining the apparatus to concentrate all resources on the direct line of succession, the vital future of the monarchy. Every word from William acted like a mirror, reflecting Charles's own past, reminding him of old mistakes and tragedies. Camilla did not stop. She stepped even closer, her fingers tightly gripping the edge of the chair, trying to provoke a reaction, a definitive decision from the king. She emphasized the royal family's public reputation and the irreparable fracture that would occur if this decision were enforced. Yet in response to the queen's growing impatience, Charles maintained a terrifying silence. His gaze fixed intently on the royal seal on his son's letter, his mind torn between marital affection and present peace on one side, and the supreme responsibility for the endurance of the dynasty on the other. He understood perfectly well the ever-growing status of the Waleses in the hearts of the public, and he also understood that William's decisiveness was exactly what a future king needed to possess. The king's silence stretched on, as if infinite strangling Camilla's final hopes. Instead of picking up his pen to sign a veto or furiously issuing directives to courtiers, as she expected, Charles sighed softly and slowly pushed the letter toward a corner of the desk. That act of letting go, along with his failure to issue any order to intervene, was the clearest answer he had decided to maintain the status quo, which meant tacitly approving William's entire decree. The king chose to stay out of this battle, accepting to yield the stage of power to his direct successor. Utter disappointment and shock were vividly written across the queen's face. Camilla realized that the balance of power had truly shifted, and that the king's favor also had boundaries that could not be crossed in the face of the throne's survival. She turned, taking heavy solitary steps out of the study, no longer maintaining the haughty demeanor of previous days. The room door closed, leaving King Charles III solitary in the falling twilight, his eyes still pinned to William's letter, the testament to an irreversible turning point of power for the monarchy. As the following weeks passed, the decisions from Kensington Palace were swiftly materialized through concrete actions, establishing an entirely new order within the British royal family. The busy schedule of major ceremonies and public engagements no longer featured a single name from the Parker Bowles family. Their absence from official events occurred quietly, yet thoroughly, as if an old chapter of the palace had just been turned without leaving a trace. Instead, all media and public attention shifted toward Prince William and Princess Catherine. Together with their children, they appeared with a higher frequency, building an image of a streamlined, exemplary monarchy focused entirely on the direct line of succession. William's firm and somewhat unilateral decision instantly ignited fierce debates among royal observers and constitutional experts. Many expressed concern over an irreparable internal rift, but overriding everything was the powerful wave of support from the British public. The people saw in William the decisiveness of a future leader, and in Catherine the fortitude of an exemplary future queen, prepared to put the safety and peace of her children above all else. This consensus from public opinion acted like a massive tidal wave, solidly reinforcing the seat of power held by the Waleses, transforming a personal decree made at Balmoral into a strategic move reshaping the future of the monarchy. At Buckingham Palace, King Charles III chose a posture of unvarying stillness in the face of all media tempests. He never made any public comment, nor did he release any press statement to explain or diffuse the situation. The sovereign's absolute silence, whether in closed cabinet meetings or before the probing questions of senior ministers, became a steely political message. It was not helplessness, but a tacit approval, a wise and practical transition of power. The king understood that his reign would eventually pass, and allowing William to personally draw the line for the next generation was exactly what was necessary to protect the longevity of the House of Windsor. Late one afternoon at Kensington Palace, the twilight sun stretched across the lush green lawn of the family grounds. From the large window of his study, Prince William stood quietly, hands in his pockets, his gaze intently following the three children, George, Charlotte, and especially Louis, as they laughed and ran around freely together under the protective eyes of the nannies. The young prince's clear laughter echoed through the stillness, carrying not a single trace of the terror or indignant tears from Balmoral a few weeks prior. The child's innocence had been restored intact, entirely separated from the manipulative schemes and hurtful envy of the adult world. The familiar sound of soft footsteps echoed behind him as Catherine approached, quietly standing beside her husband. She did not utter a word, only gently placing her warm hand on his sturdy shoulder. William turned, looking deep into his wife's peaceful yet unwavering eyes, before directing his gaze back towards their children. A sense of relief mingled with pride welled up in the heir's chest. He knew he had made a ruthless decision, one that could tear at the family dynamics of the older generation, but it was the only and most correct thing he had to do. Watching the silhouettes of his children playing in the twilight, William was certain that the curse of the past had been broken, and the tragedy of isolation and trauma that once befell his late mother Diana would never stand a chance of repeating in the lives of the future generation.
After reading this story, do you believe Prince William's firm and independent decision to completely sideline Camilla's family was a ruthless move? Or was it a necessary act of decisiveness to protect the future of the monarchy?
Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.